Yeah, recording. Okay, Luke. Well, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
So I'll start from mentioning that I love your page on Instagram.
Oh, wow.
That's how I found you there. I don't spend time on social media unless I just post my stuff. I post my stuff, I share, and then I'm out of there. I don't scroll and I don't check other people's stuff. But your page was coming through, and I saw beautiful, beautiful peyote plants there, and especially in the wild. And I thought, like, wow, that's amazing. That's very beautiful. That's certainly shows the passion and love for the medicines. So I thought, okay, why not to chat and share with people your path and then how you got to peyote in the beginning. Before that, probably psychedelics, whatever was your path. We're just sharing that. And then obviously we talk about the peyote with Church of God that we both visited at some point in our lives. So, just let the conversation flow where it goes.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I've never really had anybody ask me to tell any type of story about how this all got going. So I've hardly even, really thought of it like a story to tell people, but it is pretty interesting. I think like for myself, I've just I've always been interested in peyote since I moved out to Arizona in 2007. I was already interested in some of the more accessible psychedelics like mushrooms and um, LSD and stuff like that. And as soon as I got to Arizona, right after college, um, I just jumped right into learning about peyote. I went down to Arizona to be an archaeologist, and I was actually working in the field for a few years in Tucson. And I never imagined living in Tucson. I'm from Wisconsin, so I grew up on a farm in north central Wisconsin, moved down to Arizona, and I studied anthropology and archaeology. So people and cultures are interesting to me, and what people used as far as medicines and psychedelics in the past has always been really interesting to me. And this was a long time ago, really, when it comes to learning about stuff. The amount of information that's online right now about peyote is so many times exponentially more than what was available when I started learning. Just for instance, some of the more famous areas where peyote grows, one of them is Huiracuta in Mexico. There was nothing about Huiracuta in Mexico available online in 2007. Maybe the rarest mention, go to Huiracuta, take a bus, ask for Don Tomas, he'll help you out. Like that was the kind of information. Now it's like there's so much information out there, and I'm just kind of trying to have this page where I take pictures of peyote and habitat, but also kind of teach people a little bit about what I've learned since 2007. I've just been really interested in learning.
So you just went to Mexico straight in 2007.
No,
Oh,
no, I that's almost a completely different story, because the story of going to Mexico is really the story of me and my current wife. Um, I had visited peyote just very briefly in Texas in 2009, I think, in 2012. And it just wasn't, it's not very much fun to go to South Texas
mm.
um, and look for plants. It's all private property. It's just not set up to do that. So I started participating in a Facebook page about peyote. Um, and eventually I saw this really cool cake on there. And it was my current wife had posted a photo of a peyote birthday cake. And where was this woman living but in San Luis Potosi? And so I was like, wow, this is exactly kind of my dream, to get to know somebody who lives in that area because I'd always wanted to go down there, but I was afraid of going. So this would be, let's see, like 2019. I just said, "Hey, I'd like to go down to San Luis." And she was like, "Yeah, if you're ever here, I'll take you out to the desert." And um, that's how I started going to Mexico.
Mhm.
And my wife is from Monterrey, and she lives in San Luis Potosi. And the road from one to the other is basically through the heart of where peyote grows. So we're a little bit outside of the range where it grows in San Luis, but Monterey is kind of in the middle of everything. So as I kept visiting my wife, and we moved from being like friends to dating to novios, I just got one of the things I wanted to do when I visit was go out to the desert and see plants. And we just started going to the same areas more or less because they're safer. So that's kind of how I got to um, sort of kind of love not just the desert, but a particular areas in the desert and to care about them. Our mutual friends of Rebecca, introduced us to this area that they had discovered, which is kind of like right at the edge of a city, and where they're just expanding the city, and just destroying like a beautiful, beautiful area. Not just because it has peyote, it's just generally beautiful there. And I just knew, it was weird. I always just knew that this is where I wanted to own some land and to do something. And that's where I actually started the Instagram page, where I was like, if I have this kind of project in mind, maybe other people would be interested in it. And over time, like the reality of that area and what's been happening, and we bought a tiny little piece of land, and this whole thing has just been a learning experience. I am happy to share what I can, but it's not simple. It's a kind of complicated story.
It's okay. It's interesting, of course. So you buy the land to preserve the natural habitat and preserve the plants there.
Well, yeah. The first time I went to this area would have been like 5 years ago, and there's certain areas on Earth that are so beautiful that you
Mhm.
just feel attracted to them, and
Yeah.
not just because of the peyote. This area is just genuinely beautiful, and as I kind of pictured it, is that it would kind of be like that forever, even though I know that this land is, now it's just being obliterated. This area, it's really
Mm.
different than how it was even 5 years ago. And then I sort of have also been making friends with other people who are interested in what I'm doing, and other people who are doing their own peyote projects. And I have like a friend in South Texas who's doing a much bigger project than me. And you just kind of realize, if you focus on one subject that you care a lot about in the natural world, it's not a happy time to do that. It's very rare you'll find an area anywhere, it seems like, on Earth that's improving. And dealing with peyote is like it's just wherever there's people, the people are expanding, houses,
Yeah.
agriculture, roads.
Roads.
And what used to be these pristine deserts are the most easily targeted because the people in those areas, they look at it as empty. Uh, Peyote usually grows in the areas I'm visiting in kind of desolate parts of the desert. So it's those are the easiest areas to clear. You just bring a bulldozer in, and you can do hundreds of acres a day and just destroy it forever. It'll never be the same type of soil once it's been plowed up.
Hmm.
You know, um, so I've just been kind of. I feel like all I've been doing is learning for a long time. The stuff I did with the peyote way, I'm kind of a anthropologist type of person, just learning and interested in stuff, and also have my personal story. And it's kind of just a hobby, something I care about. And my page is just a chance for me to kind of try to tell a little bit of the story of what I've been learning, I guess. It's a sad story, but I'm also dealing with a more urban areas than where all of peyote grows. But um,
Are you talking about the Rio de Catorce area there, the expansion?
well, I'm actually most of the time when I'm visiting, I'm either visiting that area, the San Luis Peyote Gardens, or I'm visiting um, areas that are hundreds of miles north of there. Our land isn't in the southern area and it's not in Texas. It's kind of between those two. And the one, every part of where peyote grows is different, and there's a different story and there's a different history. And like Huichol people or people interested in that kind of stuff, they know a lot about Wirakuta and a lot about what's going on there. And then there's another story in Texas with what's going on with the NAC harvesting and that area. And but there's also other areas too in Coahuila,
Mm-hmm.
Tamaulipas, Nuevo Leon. Each area has its own story. I'm more in the Coahuila, Nuevo Leon area, where is
Mm.
where I do a lot of visiting as well, which is a kind of previous in the past it was kind of a more unknown area, and now it's a lot more famous, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, it's a serious problem, especially I remember, when during my time in Mexico, which it was 2008, when I was having my apprenticeship with Huichols throughout the whole year, in Nayarit. That's where it all happened to me there. And even there, I already heard about this Canadian silver mining companies invading Viracocha, destroying everything. It was then. It was like very painful already to hear that then. Total disrespect, total. For them, it's just desert, it's just resources. They don't understand anything. For them, there is no culture, there is no medicine, there is no spirituality. This is just pure money. So what you're talking about is one destruction, one form of destruction, but the mining company, that's a whole another problem,
Well, this is where like my interest in peyote and what like I kind of have just come to this general idea over time that nobody really knows everything about peyote. Each little area has so much to learn and so much cultural stuff going on as well that it's almost impossible. Nobody can learn everything. Nobody knows everything. There's a lot more to learn. And the area in San Luis where the Huichol are harvesting is its own story, and it's the fight against destruction of the desert is going to go on until there isn't any more desert left to destroy. There's always somebody who wants to benefit off of that area. It's again that Wirakuta area. It's one of the most beautiful areas on earth. It has its own thing going on. It's culturally important, but those mining concessions, they're just waiting their time until another, the wave from 2010 to 2012 that becomes something of the past, and they're always going to be fighting to get those concessions. Uh,
that's a problem. Yeah, it's a serious problem. That's why I suggest people grow their own gardens, because to preserve the medicine, like, of course, you have to fight for what's in the wild, but at some point, there will be no wild. That's what I'm saying. You
yeah,
know, so unless
well,
it's a private properties and private gardens and preserved in that way, so grow your own garden, learn from the natives, and kind of continue the tradition. That's kind of my vision for that, my recommendation.
I know you're dealing with the San Pedro, the Huachuma. Um, a lot of times, for whatever reason, people in the United States, almost everybody in Mexico, for whatever reason, people put this sort of value of peyote, mescaline, San Pedro as though there's these levels of value. And there's this strange way of thinking in the United States where in Mexico where people that aren't part of traditional cultures just assume using peyote is somehow better than using San Pedro, and that's better than using mescaline. And I feel like this is one of the biggest things to overcome in the United States is that anybody with a sunny window could become self-sufficient in growing their own cactus. Maybe not everybody, but you could have a friend who's got a garden, a window. It's so easy to grow. Here in Wisconsin, I've been growing my own San Pedro here since 2009. Um, Take them outside in the spring after the frost in, bring them inside before they get
Cold.
frozen, make them go dormant in the winter. And I mean, they don't exactly grow perfectly, but it's more than enough for myself if I need some San Pedro. And um, in Mexico, people don't eat San Pedro. I've never met
No.
anybody and it's just, that's like one thing I think that we could probably agree on and be interested in is this people need to accept that there is no like levels of value that in one situation or for one person this is good, this is good, this is good. And I
It's all
wish people
valuable equally to me.
and I see value in synthetic mescaline as well. I don't think that that's a bad substance. I'm interested in all kinds of spirituality, and I'm also interested in chemistry. And like I was just talking with somebody on Instagram and they sent in their own personal cutting of San Pedro to get it tested. And their cutting tested at 3.86% mescaline dry weight. That's more potent than an average peyote plant. And this plant is growing 6 to 12 inches per year per tip. That's a lot of
Actually,
medicine.
it's actually a foot per year.
It's actually what?
A foot.
A foot. Yeah, I mean, there's it,
Yeah,
and
it's,
that
it's huge.
I can see where peyote does have a different effects. It's a different plant. It's a different
It's a
thing.
different environment, but they're brothers.
But
It's just brothers.
most people, generally speaking, kind of my own opinion, I think most people don't want to have a really physically difficult medicinal peyote experience. I think a lot of people actually want the San Pedro experience, which has, for me, in my at least my opinion, less physical, there's issues.
It's certainly more joyful, more, to me personally, just more ethereal, more flying. It just allows you more joy, while giving you the same wisdom and connection and everything the same, in a different, with a different flavor, but they're they're similar and different at the same time, I would say.
Yeah, and I just feel like this is something that there's all these people that cultivate San Pedro that have never used it, just cultivate it because they find it interesting. And it, my own opinion is that most people think that making a San Pedro into something that they can consume is hard. When I don't understand, I've always kind of been somebody that did stuff myself. So making a tea, concentrating a tea, I just don't understand exactly why people think this is so hard.
It's not
Uh,
about that. It's like, and I don't suggest people actually do that unless you have a lot of experience with plants. It's the whole thing behind that. It's how to hold the space, it's how to hold yourself, how to navigate through, what to do with yourself in it. There's a whole culture and science behind that. So it's not just a psychedelic you just take and you just tripping. That's not right. It has to be always done in a spiritual way, in a proper mindset to connect to the spirit and learn the wisdom. That's how it is done. So that's something you don't see, unfortunately, in the States and not just in the States, like pretty much in the modern culture, there's no much respect to indigenous ways and old traditions and how people have done it forever, and that's what's missing. It's not just the substance. The substance is just a 50% of the whole thing. There is more involved into it. And when you visit Huichol, for example, in Mexico, you can learn a lot from those people. They did peyote for thousands of years. So you understand the culture, you understand the spiritual context in which they do that. And that's very important. That's why I personally always advise people to look into traditional, traditional indigenous medicinal way. And then based on this, you can build your own way through this. Like I have built my own way, but my ways are built on traditional medicines. Like peyote was with ritual, ayahuasca here with shipibo, Huachuma with people who've done it, also generationally. So you see how people work with medicine, you learn your ways through it, and then you improvise, and then you remove what doesn't suit and add what you think can be beneficial. It's a whole way of learning to work with the medicine. So it's not just buying a cactus and brewing a tea. I completely against that unless you have a serious, you know, experience with psychedelics before and then plants, and then your mind is right. And then like in your way, you have passion and love and preservation. It's like if for you it's not just tripping, it's a lifestyle, it's a respect for the medicine. That's important. This is important value. Talking about values, this is my value. This is what I value. This is what I base my life on. And then you practice, and then you grow, and then you create your own way. But it has to be approached in that way. That's what I'm saying. It's not just, oh, here is this, here is that. Let's just eat this. Let's just eat that. It's not like that. It's like it's the attitude that is wrong that I see mostly, and bringing this acknowledgement of ancient traditions is very important. And that's where anthropology is very good in that sense. It's kind of brings you to that cultural context, like, hey, look, this is the whole cultures of people who did that, you know and you can learn from them. It's accessible, and then of course if you have your medicine, you can practice and you can learn. But this is very important. But anthropology as an academic discipline is just not enough. You have to have a field experience, like what you're doing. You're traveling, you're talking to locals, you're taking the medicine with them. That's the real anthropology. That's the thing that actually teaches you, not just a book kind of thing. you know
Like I'm learning Spanish. You could learn a
mm,
lot from a book, but it helps a lot to just go and talk to people in the
yeah,
language, be
yeah,
forced to do it. I,
yeah.
I'm kind of like one of these people that comes at stuff
mm,
from multiple cultures. I'm not somebody that's opposed to people using psychedelics in one way or the other. And I don't want people to get hurt, but a lot of the people that I'm kind of friends with or know are what would fall into the experienced psychedelic user. The somebody that's naive psychedelic user, yeah, this is this is serious
totally,
business.
very.
And it's completely different how you might want to deal with somebody who is new to stuff or, even just years new to stuff versus some of the other people out there. And my background in learning about psychedelics is all from a traditional American culture. And then also, as I've matured, learning about some of these more traditional uses. I've, I'm just in a process of learning, but I am interested in all this. And to be honest, the traditional use of San Pedro is not really accessible in the literature.
mm,
Um, there's not a lot of good books. There's not a lot of popular culture references. People don't know anything about it for the most part. So that's a pretty big obstacle for people. You know, they don't know anything about it. And, you know, how long has it been since you were out at the Peyote Way? What kind of years was that?
The other way, I think we're talking 2007.
Okay. So that was right when I moved to Arizona. Did you get to meet and spend time with them
Emmanuel?
with the man?
Emmanuel? Yes, he was already pretty sick then, so it wasn't much communication, but it's just like very, light. He was already like, he was not available for much, but we met, I knew him, and I felt his energy, and I liked his energy. He was real. He was a real guy who really loved the medicine, and also not only loved the medicine, he also tried to help other people to get to the medicine in legal way. He was the guy who formed the peyote charge. He fought in the court for the rights of the white people to use peyote there. He did a lot. He contributed a lot. So, but there was not much already going on, like on a personal level. So we were coming there, we saw him there, he was coming out of the room saying hello, just a little conversations here and there. And that's it. That's as much as I know him.
Yeah, I started going out and just because I was interested in the church, I didn't go for my first spirit walk till Emmanuel had already died. But I actually
Um,
visited the church twice while he was still living, but he was so sick he wasn't taking any visitors then. So I only met Emmanuel as somebody's the air, you could hear the
yeah.
air thing on the other side of the door, and I never got to meet him. And but I got to know Matt and Annie. I started doing spirit walks, and I started helping out as a worker out there.
Mhm.
And then I eventually did their like 3 month apprenticeship, earned
Mhm.
my second degree deacon training. I got my medallion.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I love it out there. I haven't been continuing going out there
Mhm.
much, but I did, you know, participate in a lot of spirit walks and help people, and I I've learned a lot from them. Did you ever continue doing the spirit walk on your own ever or anything like that?
Well, my story was a bit different. I found out like, I think 2000. I'm not sure, 6, 7, maybe 7, something like that. And that's, I think, the year I was going there a few times, bringing some friends with me. And then at that time, I realized that I wanted to do it in a different way. I wanted to do it with traditional, with the Mexican shamans. So I wasn't ready to do it myself then. So I said, okay, I need to find guys in Mexico to do it with them. And the peyote led me there through them, through the church. It was a very curious situation. It's like that was just what I brought into the medicine, and sitting in the desert there and realizing that, it would be nice to meet some folks in Mexico, help me. Just telling the medicine, like, help me, help me to find them. I love it here, but I need that. That's was the calling was coming from there. So what happened is that after a while, I just got email from Annie, and she referred me to their old friend who moved to Mexico a long time ago and married a Huichol woman and was living there. And it's like, okay, I'm going. It's like that just came from the mess. And I asked her, like,
Rattlesnake. That's
oh,
who you're talking.
yeah, yeah, talking about rattlesnake. Yeah,
Or,
he died last year. So.
oh my God,
Yeah,
he's dead.
yeah, 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 yeah. Last year, it's like recently, like what we are, like June. I think either this year, I don't remember exactly. Maybe 6 months we're talking, something like that. So, and then I asked her, like, hey, why did you refer me to him? And she said, well, Peyote did. So Peyote sent me to Mexico from the church. So I was very grateful, and that's how my Mexican journey began. I just went to visit him, and I was there throughout the whole 2008. That was my all year coming, go, like six time, and then the last time I had my shamanic initiation there through death, nearly died there, and then survived that, and after this the doors just opened wide, and then I just moved to Peru 5 years following that because I was already going to Peru years before. It was in parallel, Peru and Mexico, Huachuma and Peyote and ayahuasca was in parallel. So the calling was coming from both places, so I was just following it. And then 2008, that's happened, and that's it. I realized, and there was science after that. I came back to California, and there was science, and I realized, okay, my time to go to Peru to serve the medicine, to serve Huachuma. But we spent a year together with Rattlesnake, with Maria, his wife, and his village there, and with Rufino and other rituals there. It was very magical time, truly. And I described that in my first book, Path, Seeking Truth in the World of Lies. It's there.
Like roughly, which ceremonial group were they part of, or like where are these guys located? Were they like San Andres or?
No, that's more, no, it's a Nayarit. I don't want to say exactly where because I don't want the people just coming there and making,
Oh,
you know, it's like creating problems for these people there. There's like a very humble dwelling there. So, but it's in Nayarit. It's like in the foothills of Sierra Madre. So
okay, yeah, I can.
not far. And it's just it's just very simple, like very ritual. They well, Maria, it's another story. Doña Maria, his wife, her grandfather was Don Jose Matsua, which was the legendary Maracame there. So that's the lineage that they were working with. And the rattlesnake was kind of, enhancing and reviving this because there is like a cultural influences and Catholic influences. So it's not exactly as like, hardcore peyote tradition just thriving. It has its own, things around this. So he was kind of clearing that path to kind of resurrect the old ancestral line through her and through his work with the medicine. And it was very interesting and very authentic, real, hardcore, sleeping on the ground, bathing in the river, taking the medicine at night, like in a way that I wanted. Fire, stars, and just lots of contemplation time, some singing too. So he was inviting the all rituals, they were like all his friends there. Like the son of Don Jose Matsuo, he was 8 years old. Don Catarino also died. I was drinking the medicine with him mostly, and then his wife was coming too. It's like a unique thing, you're just sitting there taking medicine with like 80 years old guys, who are like lineage people there, and they just really do it in a real way, like just no theater, no show, nothing, just taking the medicine, little talking, some singing, some silence, just thinking about life. It was very transformative, very memorable experience, which really kind of opened the way for me. So I'm grateful for that. And even though at that time I thought I was very unfortunate to go through this ordeal, but that's actually turned to be a good thing later.
We
So.
we when my wife was pregnant with our 2-year-old, we were visiting Wirikuta, because we like to go to a touristy area near there, Real de Catorce. This is
Mm,
like 2.5 hours from our house. So
mm,
sometimes we just go out to Real, and we were gonna go spend a day. below the mountain and go take some photos. Um, and we didn't have a Jeep at that time, so we were with our hostel friend. And I said I wanted to go visit this site, and we went and visited it. And then he was going to take us back to this area, just to hang out for like 5, 6 hours, and then he was going to come back for us. And we're going to this kind of camping area, and I asked him if he ever sees Huichol people harvesting peyote in the desert. And literally at that moment, he goes, "Yeah, there's one right there." And just one of these like multiple use cultural areas near Wirikuta, where this hostel owner takes people to look at plants, is also where a ceremonial center has been harvesting their medicine for, according to our friend, he's been going there since he was a kid. He's 70 years old. I didn't ask him if his grandparents went there, how long, but I mean, he, his family and his ceremonial group go to one area, no bigger than a farm in Wisconsin.
Mm.
And that's where they harvest their medicine. That's where they hunt for the peyote that they want. So I'm a gringo. My wife is Mexican. She's
Mm.
pregnant. We just get dropped off at this kind of a tank area where they've mounded up some dirt so that water accumulates. And it's also got nice big trees out in the desert, big mesquites. And we get dropped off there, and it's just about 100 yards away from where this ceremonial group is. There's Huichol people who go to Wirikuta to harvest peyote for their household, but there's also ceremonial groups, which is the boards, the gourd where they go as a group, on these formal type of pilgrimages, which it's like two different
Mhm.
ways of doing it. Well, it just so happened this is the day after this ceremonial group um, had been doing their big harvest and their big ceremony for the night. So it's a really big day, actually. Everybody's kind of, some of the ceremonial restrictions on eating and drinking are
Mhm.
lifted, on resting. So it's like about, let's say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're just, me and my wife dropped off at this area right next to this giant group of Huichol Wiratari people. And I'm just thinking, oh God, somebody from that group is gonna come over to us and just be like, please, you have the entire desert here. Could you just go anywhere
Yeah,
else? Just
just
there's an
a little
entire,
bit.
just anywhere else. Just please just go away. We started talking to the bus driver, and he was friendly enough. And I'm like, well, is it all right if I take any pictures? And he goes, I don't make any of the rules. Ask this guy. So we started. The leader of that ceremonial group is our friend Marcelino, and he's both a Marakame and a real character. And um, since that time, we've just kind of been friends. And I've kind of been doing some stuff with him, but more just kind of developing a friendship. Um, and so that's sort of how we made friends with this
Mhm.
Marakami, as we just randomly got dropped off there. And instead of
Mhm.
him being like, get the hell out of here, he's like open to being friends, because this is a very, there's kind of a divide in the Huichol because there's literally a river. So there's people that are more connected to the Nayarit side, and
Mhm.
there's people that are more connected to like the Guadalajara side, Jalisco side.
Mhm.
And our friend, this group, they don't go to that other area very much. It's a lot longer trip, and they're much poorer than even the people that live on the other side because they're less connected to the
Mhm.
artisanal market. So we've basically been making friends with our Marcelino and selling a little bit of his art, and
Mm.
just, and it's a lot different than your story, but boy, it's been a learning experience as
Oh, for
well.
sure, absolutely. And your appearance there, it wasn't a coincidence. It's like when you work with the medicine, nothing is. That's why he looked at you and he accepted you because you were brought there by the spirit. He recognized that and he invited you. That's how I see it. And this guy, he is from where he lives?
He is the one of the two head Murakami from Las Latas in Santa Catarina.
That's
Santa
in
Catarina.
San Luis Potosi.
No,
No
he is
worries.
in Jalisco in the mountain. In
Ah.
this, he lives in the Sierra Madre
Mhm.
where he does his ceremonial work. He said he's been doing. See, the Huichol people, if they're part of a ceremonial, there's two different types of kind of 5 year cycles. There's 5 year cycles that you make kind of in your rancho. These sort of like I'll pledge 5 years to something in the ranch, and these are always done as a husband and wife. And then there's also the ceremonial groups where the people have these gourds and they have a deity that they represent them and their wife for 5 years. It's like one cycle and a different thing. This our friend Marcelino, he's been doing stuff with the ceremonial group for like 40 years. He's never had a break. His whole life is going on these pilgrimages,
Mm.
and it's really hard because it's very expensive, and there's always these responsibilities. So he's both a traditional ceremonial leader, and he travels all over basically fundraising for himself. He has to do these different
Pilgrimage.
he to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a weird life because he can never quite get a hold of them. He's always doing something, and he's always trying to find more people to do his curing on, and it's a rough life. No matter how much money they sell in art, there's always somebody in the community who could
In
use
need.
something.
I know. I know. I've been contributing. I was going back to America hungry, like because I was leaving all my money there just to help these people. Like literally thinking like maybe I'll get some sandwich in the plane and then I'll figure this out. You know what I mean? It's like, I know how things are. It's
I,
always need. There's always need.
yeah, and this is like something I post pictures on an Instagram page. I have a wife and a kid. I have a few friends that are interested in peyote, but this stuff is really like it's a lot more complicated than people realize. I mean, the life of these traditional people is not like a book or something like that.
Mhm.
It's
It's
real life,
hard. Hard.
and if the more friends you make, my wife kind of taught me this, and it's been a long process of learning that in Mexico, just because I look like a gringo, I am a gringo. People unfortunately look at the kind of idea of taking advantage of somebody
Yeah, it's the same
is
here.
is everybody. From the plumber comes over to the guy at it's not always bad. It's just part of life. And it isn't unreasonable for somebody in need to ask for money. But also I've been really kind of slow and having a hard time learning to just say no. And that's where selling the art has been kind of a
Mhm.
priority for me, where instead of trying to give gifts, where we're just trying to help one family sell their art. And it's
Yes, that's actually a very important point, and that's something I learned from my first teacher, Don Howard, also rest in peace. And it's like that when I came to Peru first time, 2005, for ayahuasca in Huachuma to go with him. And he took us to the jungle people, like tribes, Amazonian tribes. And it was one of the lessons was this. I remember what you just said, it just resonated completely. And that's an important point, what you're saying. That's why I'm sharing this story. We were sitting there with the tribe, and it's like, and those kids playing, and it's like everybody's like complete poverty, man. It's like these people are living on the ground, like, it's just, you can't even imagine. So And I was like, okay, I had some money. I want to share money. He said, no, don't give the money. And I'm like, why? I want to help these people. They are poor, you know? I said, no. When you do that, you you kind of encourage laziness and you fuel the sense of entitlement, which is actually toxic. What you do when you want to help, you buy their art. You buy their art, and then by this, you motivate them to produce things, and you show respect to their culture, which kind of resurrects that and kind of bring that back. Oh, this is valuable what we do. It's not just a silly thing that nobody cares. Like, so you bring value into their work. So you're helping them, but you also kind of making them work. So that's very important. Like I learned this from him. And it's like I always do this. Like when I want to help people here, hey, sell me something. It doesn't matter. Do I need it? I don't care, man. I have everything. But it's like, hey, it's a beautiful work you did. You appreciate, you show this appreciation and you encourage them to work. It's a spiritual thing. You boosting their spirit, you're boosting their connection to their own tradition. So you're helping them financially and you're also helping them spiritually. So what you're saying, selling art, is that, you
Yeah,
know?
that's what we're trying to do because it's just the amount of need would bankrupt anybody because in a community like he's in, he always knows somebody who's sick.
Yeah, of
Either
course.
somebody's gonna be having a baby or somebody's gonna be dying or somebody's crop's gonna fail. It's just, and
It's endless.
that's where, like, as a white person from Wisconsin, we're just not connected like that either. And that's been my one of my biggest learning experiences because we have a baby who's 2 years old and I
Mm.
have a wife and kind of a life here and a life there is just trying to, like, there's these things I'd like to do, but I also have to be responsible
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
and my dream, if somebody would like to pay me to go on all these trips, that's great, but that's not going to happen. So I've kind of had to scale back what I would like to do, like you're talking about, how spending time with people in their life. um, I'm so busy, I don't have much time to do that. I
Mm.
was really lucky last year where Marcelino invited me to the Fiesta de Tambor, the drum ceremony, in his ceremonial centers group. And I'm visiting Mexico. I always feel like I stick out, and I'm usually visiting non-touristy areas. But I've never really had an experience like that where it was just me and my friend from San Luis were the only people who aren't from there visiting. There was no white visitors. There was no Mexican visitors. It was just me and my friend Rodrigo and 150 people from that ceremonial center doing their ceremony. That it's a really special event. And I actually was invited because I was supposed to bring our son, but it just didn't work out. And in the ceremony, they spend all day and all night doing these prayers where in the daytime they introduce the kids to the culture where on their traditional pilgrimage from the mountain to Wirakuta and back, each spot where they camp is where they've been doing this. Oh, it's like it's a route that everybody in their ceremonial group has done for as long as they've been doing it. And they introduce the kids to this by singing. Each of the stops has a different part of the ritual and a different set of songs. Of course, I don't understand any of it because it's in the indigenous language and nobody has any interest in translating it for me or anything like that. But just, it was the thing that my real experience of seeing this was just seeing all of these god houses in their temple lit up with fire, the respect, seeing a god house, a little building, very small temple that is for the spirit of peyote. It's a temple for peyote.
Yeah,
And
what's the name? What's the name of it? It's in Virikuta when they have the peyote print in it. Is that what
The
you're saying? Peyote
yes,
print, the print,
on
like
top
in
of
the rock.
Cerro Quemado, there's a Ziriki, these god houses. Well, in the traditional communities, they have one of these for all of the principal deities, and the largest temple is for the fire. For me, as somebody like interested in anthropology and interested in cultural stuff, it was both like I'm living this experience, but also it's really out of time because people were doing the form of the clothes, this or that changes. I'm there, that changes, but the building's been there for a long time, and
Yeah.
the chance it's just for me that was the first and really only time where I visited an indigenous community and really got to feel the vibe, I guess, and
Mhm.
just like visiting another world.
Yeah.
And it's that's what I've the respect that they have for peyote, the fact that they can use it in a variety of ways and it benefits them. Just the respect for peyote. That's the main thing I've been learning. I have,
Yeah.
hopefully, I'll be learning more stuff, but um,
It's respect and love. It's one thing.
that ceremony is particularly kind of different than other things that the Weech will do. There's like two principal ceremonies in that ceremonial center. There's the peyote dance and there's the drum festival. They also do other things, but like this particular drum festival is kind of it's not quite a party, but in some ways it kind of is as well. There's a lot of drinking and festiveness without any of the rowdy, out of control drinking. Like people weren't drinking to get drunk, just drinking. And strangely enough, for me, I guess also using a pretty fair amount of peyote. And
Yeah.
at about 10 or 11 o'clock, I was tired. I hadn't slept so well. I wasn't, and I just sort of fell asleep. And I went back to my space and I fell asleep. And at about 3 a.m., somebody woke me up. And it was like I woke up. I'd already been in one different universe and I was in another different universe. And this is where the kids have gone to sleep. The women
Mm.
are, for the most part, in their house. And it's just the gourd holders who have been eating a lot of peyote doing their violins and guitars and dances. And honestly, for me, that was one of the I mean I just a different world, visiting a different world where I never even really realized existed, and it was that was just so different. And also it wasn't part of that like Native American church, there's one way to do peyote, this is it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
No, they
these
have
guys,
different ways.
and yeah,
Hmm.
our strangely enough, our friend Marcelino occasionally calls us after he's eaten peyote. He harvests a little bit of peyote in the desert somewhat regularly, and like he just they they have very formal, important ways that they use peyote, but sometimes they just kind of eat it to be in the mindset that they want to be in, and they continue on with their life, which is kind of
Well, it is their life. It is their life. It's like, it's what
yeah.
they do. I was invited on a peyote hunt to go with them from Nayarit, and I wanted to, but it just wasn't the right time. So I had to kind of pass on that. But that would be an interesting journey to make once in a lifetime. Actual the way they did it, like long drive, long harvest, eat the medicine, hunt for peyote all night. It's just like bring it back. 3 days ceremony, hunting for a deer. It's like a whole thing there. You know,
it, it's it's
it's
pretty amazing that these things are still going on.
yeah,
And for me, like if I would say one thing, every little group of Weechel and every ceremonial center, they're each doing this in their own way, in their own version of doing this.
yeah.
Each it's that's a kind of like for somebody who had been reading versus kind of learning from people, it's pretty amazing. My friend was kind of explaining it that each Marakame or family group leader, they have their own vision of how it is, and like
Yes.
they roll with it. If this year there's this issue, they deal with it. It's not like um, it just keeps going no matter what. If there's a bump in the road, they figure out how to get over that bump. We had kind of a plan to do a sort of like what you're talking about. Our friend's ceremonial group, Marcelino, his ceremonial group only harvest peyote the first year, the third year, and the fifth year of the ceremonial cycle. And the second and the fourth year, they do stuff at their rancho level, but not so much they don't do a peyote hunt as a ceremonial group because it's a big deal to get 25 people out to the desert and back. This is so this year Marcelino is needs peyote and he goes and hunts it, but he doesn't. They're not doing the big ceremonial group, and he
Mhm.
invited us to go with him and his wife to go harvest peyote and
Do that. Did
um,
you do that?
to
That's
be
good.
honest, it was a disaster. We only made it to the second stop and we got a flat tire and
Mm.
we had to go home. And they continued without us because it kind of was financially starting to be outside of the
Mm.
costs we had expected. And
I understand. So
that,
logistically, it was a disaster.
you know, logistically, it was a,
Logistically, I see. But it's a powerful experience, you know.
but I was really worried about it because kind of it blew my budget out. But I was like, well, what are they going to do? And finally,
They
they
walk.
made it. They survived.
They walk.
Um, Marcelino gave me a call after they had harvested their medicine and just was, it's just like we did it. And I was just like, oh, thank God, because I just it's real life and how these people Luichel are doing stuff is it's not a fairy story. What fairy book story? Whatever happens, happens. And it's
Yeah, it's a real life.
you want to help, but I'm also married. We have a kid. We have a budget.
Yeah.
If our Jeep gets another spare tire, and then if we needed, it, these things don't end. We still are going to do this. It's just not going to happen according to the schedule we originally planned. We're still going to do this. Just got to get some money saved up, go down to Mexico, and it'll happen again. That's
But
like,
here's what you can do to help yourself and the people you work with. You just don't be afraid to tell people about your plans and make it happen. Just for example, on your Instagram page, just make it, talk to your guys there, say, hey, what if I come with people? Can we do this? Can we do that? How much we need? And just organize that. And you'll be surprised how actually easy that is. There will be people who will resonate and who will like to go on the peyote hunt or take the medicine there. It's like you see the harvest in the wild, Like don't be afraid to call people in, you know? It's like that's how you do it. It's not just you, it's not just your budget. Let other people contribute and participate for their own benefits. Everybody benefit. They benefit, you benefit, and the people in Mexico benefit. It's like that's how it works. Everybody has to benefit. That's how things should be done.
well,
Uh,
that's pretty interesting advice. I have, to be honest, I haven't really considered that, even though I'm pretty much in the perfect spot to
of
do it because
course, you have all the
um,
connections there.
there's maybe you deal with this, but peyote, the way it actually is in the wild and what's going on in Texas and San Luis and all these areas, people think these things that aren't true about it. There's people create, like, I'll just go off for instance in South Texas. 100 years ago, there must have been between a half a billion and a billion or more plants there. It was thick with peyotes, thick, thick, thick. a resource, so the best place peyote's ever found to grow. It was the best there ever was. And right now, the peyote the peyoteros are selling, that's harvested by the people who harvest the peyote, is often like really small.
Yeah,
It's
like 1 year old, maybe 2 years old,
re-
little
regro-
babies.
regrowths. They're regrowths where they harvest and they go back in 6 months, or they go back in a year, they go
Mm.
back in 2 years.
Silver babies.
And the Native American church, they need Texas medicine. They need it. So, and habitats being destroyed really rapidly there. So people that are interested in peyote from the USA perspective, they go, "Oh my God, it's like border. It's a threatened species, critical, moving towards being endangered. Native Americans need it." So there's like this idea in people's heads of extreme scarcity, and so they think, well, if there's not a lot of peyote in South Texas, well, then nobody should be harvesting peyote anywhere. People don't, they're not open to kind of understanding this sort of idea that peyote can be harvested responsibly.
Yeah, of
That's,
course. You
for
just cut
me,
you cut the head. You just cut the head, leave the body,
and it
you
comes
know?
back.
And it comes
It's
back 4 times. You just that's the responsible harvesting. Just cut the head, leave the body, let them grow. That's it. Come back in 3, 5 years to that spot. That's what it is. It's not just the whole thing. Don't dig up the whole thing. You know?
it's but for whatever reason, just the people that talk about eating peyote are instantly assaulted online by other people who have an opinion of what's going on. And to be honest, when it comes to this dealing with online people, they're mostly annoying. They're bothersome when it comes to this particular
Mm.
subject. And it's kind of, I, I don't think people really understand. Like the area where we bought land, a few hundred yards from there, there's a person who has enough money to live in the best part of town in the best houses, a million millionaire, a rich person. So they bought sometime in the past a piece of property for nothing, almost no money. They convinced this entire community to sell like half of their land. And I didn't really quite realize this, but this is only a few hundred yards from our property. And there's a process that this landowner is doing right now of bulldozing their entire land, which is
Mm.
a true peyote paradise. I mean, we're talking,
Painful.
so far they've destroyed an area maybe between 100 and 150 acres, but there was probably 10,000, 20,000 plants there,
Gone.
everywhere. So one person is saying, "Oh, you could never eat a
Mm.
peyote plant without causing some damage." And where I'm
That's
visiting,
not
I
true.
visited where they're destroying tens of thousands of plants like that. Well, why couldn't people can this medicine in the particular areas is less vulnerable than other areas, and it's a subtlety people don't quite understand. Like even for instance, like the real issue I see is this taking the medicine home with you, peyote. If people could just say, okay, I can eat some medicine out in the desert and I won't take any home with me, then there's no issue really. It's the people that say, "Oh,
Mhm.
I know where peyote is. What if I cut 1,000 of them, dry them in my
Mhm.
hotel room, ship them to Europe, have my friend in Europe
Yeah.
ship it back to me, then I sell it for $1,000?" And another guy goes, "Hey,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. That's a great idea." It's for every person that visits Wirakuta, one out of so many of them is just that type of person.
That's why I support to maintain the harvest to be illegal. I support the idea of harvesting peyote in the wild to be illegal for this exact way. You know what I mean? It's like it should be reserved for traditional harvest for like, for people who have conservation and respect in their mind. You go with them, you harvest properly, you do the ceremonies, all good. If you just do that, what you said, it should be illegal and it should be strong. I'm totally like, I know this issue. It was before too. I'm not for people just going to Barracuda and just destroying the thing and cutting the whole thing and selling stuff. That's not good. It should be legal and it should be protected.
And this is it didn't I these are like the kind of things that I've been learning about that I try to share on my page because and I don't always share on my page. I like to talk to people who are interested in studying peyote or study peyote. And first time I started talking to somebody in Mexico, they were letting me know, I think that the Native American church members are connecting with the Huichol, exploiting the Huichol, and illegally exporting peyote to the United States. And I was like, that's quite a story. And over time, I found exactly who's more or less who's doing it. And it's the tribes in the United States are so disconnected from peyote that they're not really understanding that you can't just go to Wirakuta, have a Mexican Indian harvest for you, have them cross the border with it or smuggle it across, and then it's legal. This is another like it's the Native American Church in the United States is not understanding the issues that they're presented with. The most important issue for every Native American church member should be the sustainability of this medicine
Yes.
in Texas. And that's the one in Texas. And as we were discussing earlier, it is moving from being a resource of a billion plants to millions and millions of plants. But if you're going to harvest 1 or 2 million per year, then you need to have 20 or 30 million in the fields just to sustain it.
Yeah.
And instead of there being a plan, they've given the people that sell the medicine all of the ability. The people that sell the medicine, they're in a business. They buy from people that pick. The pickers have no connection to the people that use it. So a lot of the pickers, and they've always been like this for a long time, are alcoholics, they're methamphetamine addicts, they're crack addicts, and they just go and cut plants.
They're just workers.
They're just worker bees. And even kind of worse than that, like one of my friends has been explaining this to me, like, how is this medicine that's supposed to help people getting kind of the process of having something sacred in habitat and then the people using it in the teepee, there's just like these things.
Disconnect.
And the disconnection is causing this over harvesting of smaller regrowths. The people there's nobody guiding the ship. The Native American church as a whole, the organizations that people belong to, the NAC of North America, the Dine organization, all they do is fight. All they do is fight all year round. They don't like this person. They don't like this group. They're mad at this. They're the most disorganized, biggest time wasters. I try to follow what's going on in the NAC. They have conferences that are live streamed, and all they do is talk, and they never ever do basically anything. That's like the time in the sand glass is all dripping away, and all of the leaders are fighting because they don't like some other person. It's the biggest issue as far as peyote sustainability in Texas is completely ignored. So, but then people started to realize, oh, okay, the peyote I'm getting from South Texas isn't very large. It's expensive. How could I get the same thing but for cheaper and potentially more potent? And so people just made connections with Huichol people who can legally harvest but have no legal right to sell. Then they just sort of get it over across the border and they're selling it in vast amounts to Native American church members. But the areas where they're harvesting in Wirakuta are not limitless. They're just taking the problem that they created in Texas
Just spreading.
and taking it to and all. And as you're talking about how maybe for certain people who live an indigenous life, you don't want to spoil them in a certain way. Well, teaching people that you can harvest a lot of peyote and sell it to the United States, that means this idea is never going to disappear. It's somebody's always going to have this idea. And as far as I'm seeing, the connections between the United States and Mexico are increasing. And a big fear of mine is that the next step in this process is why have just indigenous people? Why not have the cartels do it for you? The cartels exist from Tamaulipas to San Luis. It's all cartel land, more or less. It Why don't they just do it? Why not just make peyote an illegal drug that the Native American church opened up a can of worms thinking that Mexican peyote is somehow something they have a right to, and it's going to destroy lots of areas in the future unless you go back in time and the Native American Church of the United States starts doing conservation practices. It's
Yeah,
a
they have to grow their own medicine. It just
well
have to
then
be.
it's really complicated because in the older Native American church members, they want to buy peyote from the same dealer that they bought it from a long time ago, who's doing things how they think is more or less correct. But then you start calling that dealer, they're out of medicine. These are legal peyote dealers. They call the next one. Eventually, you're at the guy who has no morals, who always has peyote, has the cheap ones, and they go, hey, who cares? I'll buy that one that's not sustainably harvested. It's
Mm-hmm. And
the
you
whole
promote that. Yeah.
the whole system. That's where like learning about peyote. There's all of these stories that there's this beautiful thing with it itself, but the people around it and the stories around it, it's really different than I met. Just like how I learned about the Peyote Way Church from Mad Nanny. Um, that's a really interesting story. But this Emmanuel, his life is very different than a. It's he only really became this kind of person you got to meet at the end of his life. He had to get through a lot to get there. A lot. I mean, it's a complicated. So I always kind of assumed Emmanuel was just like Matt Nanny when
Mm.
he's not any. He was never anything like them. I don't know if you can see, but I
Yeah,
just
I see the word there.
I got interested in the Weechel and the Peyote Way because I started to see the art when I was living in
Mm.
Tucson. I would see Weechel art in a couple of stores, and I would see the Mana pottery online when I would just Google peyote or peyote Arizona. And I really love that part of peyote. It seems to really bring out some interesting art
Mm.
and uh, like for me, I one of the coolest things about being at the church is as somebody that loves art, I actually got to participate in making some of the stuff that I love as well. I
This is why it's just going a little bit back to our conversation. This is why I recommend people who want to take peyote legally in America to go to Arizona to Metanani and just do it there because it's pure experience. It doesn't have anything around it like you would find in a very structured Native American church. So for me, I was attracted to them because of that, because of the freedom around the medicine. And that's how I do my ceremonies here. It's like very similar. Nature, silence, pure connection, let people have their experience, support when needed, guide through, but this is between you and the medicine. So basically what I do here in Peru with Huachuma is what any mat do there. A bit different because they're really like they just leave you there. They just leave you there with sleep. I don't do this. It's more guided than that. But in a sense, it's very similar. It's just between you and the medicine. So If people want to do it, go to Peyote Way Church of God, do the spirit walk, have the real medicine in a very authentic, real way. Just you, fires, the fire, the stars, and the medicine. And if you want to go to Mexico, I definitely recommend that. Absolutely. Work with rituals. Just find the people you like because, as we discussed previously, there are different ways to do it. And I detest alcohol, and that's a big problem. And it's a poison that was brought here by Spanish, conquistador, and it destroyed South America, destroyed Mexico, destroyed everybody. And these people not immune to it. They are drunk and they have this problem. Same thing you see in Peru. So I'm against that. I'm like a vehement, you know, I'm anti-alcohol at my core soul. There is no deeper place in my soul that I can reach and speak against that. It's like to me, medicine is medicine and this is poison. Alcohol I use for bacteria on my hand. That's what it's good for. You know, we don't drink alcohol here. So unfortunately, many indigenous communities are suffering from that. Same in Peru, I've seen that in Mexico, I've seen it here. It's everywhere. It's a problem. It's a serious problem that we try to heal people from this, using the medicine. So find the people you like, find people you respect, people who work with the medicine in a respectful way, whatever is the way. But when they have pure connection to spirit and love and dedication, these are the people to go and take the medicine with. What is in Mexico? If you want that kind of experience, or in America to do it legally, just go to the Peyote Way Church of God in Arizona. That would be just my personal recommendation to everybody who want to do it, in that way. And definitely to chat with you and see if you can organize the trips there, to recruit and to meet your friends there. I think it's very, very rich and interesting and very authentic.
Well, yeah, thanks. I'm kind of hearing your story and I'm realizing how Matt and Annie might have been a bigger influence than I realized because one thing about them is that they're not faking it. They're not, they don't, they go to town once every 2 weeks. They don't participate in all kinds of nonsense. They eat healthy. They don't drink. Like they're not, in how you're talking about, I mean, I would prefer to go visit somebody who's like you or like Matt and Annie who actually is trying to live a healthy life and not just,
It's real.
I
It's a
it's real.
lifestyle.
Matt and Annie, they continue to impress me all these years later because it's not they're some of the only people I really met who I can vouch for is just completely not being full of it.
No,
They're
they simple. They peyote lovers. Yeah, they're real.
and
Just real.
I don't know if you know Kaneshka, but he's the like third part of the chair. He's been out there for 5 years or something. He's kind of not a whole lot younger than them, but the he's one of my good friends out there, and we did our deacon stuff at kind of the same time. And I left, and he never left, and he's a really good guy too. He grew up in Afghanistan and experienced the trauma of the Russian war and fleeing and refugee and cultural stuff. And he's been using peyote for a long time to get over all of these things. And, when I was out at the Peyote Way Church, like, I kind of wonder how this is for you, but maybe I had some doubts. I had these, is this going to work? But when I was helping people have their spirit walks, the best part of it for me and why I really love everything that happened is the day after I would get a little bit of time to see the people generally or say hi. And you really did get to see people at this like really great moment in their life where they had gone through this long night of eating peyote and whatever they had been through. And after it's over, they all have a beautiful sparkle. Just this like I see them before and I see them after, and that's the one thing I really liked, and why I really believe in peyote is to have seen the people and see how many of them these feelings might fade. People have to do some work, after they leave, but to have the opportunity to kind of be refreshed was, I really, it's been a while since I've done anything
Yeah.
like.
Well, I took it to another level. I have to here it's a daily life for us, And you take the medicine with the people we do daily ceremonies. I work with light, with beauty. And then at night we have the sharing circle. At the next day, everybody rest and cook food, whatever you want to do. So you see what you described. This is like a daily life at Huachuma Wasi. People come with all their problems, with all their traumas and all their, burdened by life, by things, and then you see the healing happens and people transform, and then you just see them bloom like literally same day, and then the next day, and then more and more and more. That's how the healing happens here. It's a very kind of concentrated, but what you describe is kind of a similar thing. Is to meet the people with whom you're journeying, and
Well,
then you share.
the Peyote Way Church has a in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. Like
Mm-hmm.
they, Emmanuel could not deal with people. He would not have been able to do what you're doing. His advice would have been too harsh, and a certain amount of people would not have been ready for that. And he was not. I mean, we were kind of taught what had worked for him, and then what. And I can imagine it must be really hard to deal with everybody. I'm not quite the people person that I'm a little just because doing some sort of thing with people isn't something I've experienced, but I imagine it's not easy.
Well,
After,
not always. It depends on the people. Some people are harder than others, but that's the whole point is to bring people together. That's the beauty. That's what it is to bring different people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, different cultures, different problems, and bring them all in a sacred space and just quiet their mind and open their heart and really connect to nature and just think about life, and just find the healing and understanding and clarity to lead a better life. And just bring them together into this sacred space through different medicines, because I have strong medicine, I have light medicine for new people with experience. I make different medicine. So, but they all come in the same place of connection and beauty and the sense of sacredness. And then just to go home better than they work here, better than they came here with. So that's what we do here. You know?
yeah, I've never heard of anything quite like what you're doing, to be honest. I can't say I can think of some other model or organization. It sounds like you really developed your
My
own
own
thing.
thing. Yeah.
When I did read about San Pedro and the shamans of the past, that seemed to be one of the universal takeaways is that people developed the ceremony how they wanted it to be and using the skills they had and what they had learned and with the point of
Yeah.
helping people.
I,
But
I have my own vision. I work with the medicine for a long time. I have my own vision, and that's it. It's like that's what I find to be most effective and most beautiful, most everything, more healing. So just perfecting the path as you go, learning from the medicine, learning from mistakes. But at the end, this is just your expression. It's an individual expression based on real things, but it's your individual expression. It's like love. There is love. There is love. Love exists, but we express it through our own beings, through our own life. So it's no different with spirit. There is spirit, but we express it through ourselves, through our personality, through our character, through our. And that's the beauty of it, because it's all different and it's unique in a sense. So that's what I'm saying. Find people who you like. It's like going on a date. It's the same thing. My advice to people is like when you go on a date, you go on a date with someone you like, right? Otherwise, you don't go on a date, obviously. I mean, you need to have an attraction. You need to have that chemical attraction or whatever it is. It's like you just like a person. Same thing here when you just need to like the medicine person. If you don't take their medicine because it's like taking them. When I brew my medicine, I put myself into it. It's like you drink me, liquid me mixed with the cactus. It's my values, what I stand for, what I believe in. It's like you drink me. So if you don't like a person, don't take medicine with the person. That's it. And the same way, if you like a person, if you resonate, it's just it's a resonance, really. It can be just a guy you don't understand what he's saying, like a Spanish guy, or I mean, sorry, like a Quechua guy, or in Mexico, it's like it doesn't matter what he says. How do you feel about the person? What do you like his smile? Do you like his lights coming through his eyes? Do you trust him? That's how you decide. That's how you choose. It's like, okay, I feel good about this. Let's do it. Let's see some medicine. You know what I mean? So that's just what I would recommend to people who are looking to do it with others, because there is a lot of learning in that. You can learn from other people and especially people with a lot of experience. And then you kind of, make your own things out of it when you have
Well,
enough experience.
pretty cool that you actually did it. So to me, that's pretty impressive that it's actually doing it. It
Yeah, I
is
built
kind
my
of,
life in it. This is our life here. Our healing place is it's our home. We're not people like telling me, many people telling me like, hey, you should stop calling yourself a retreat center. You're above that. You're not a retreat center, which technically we are a retreat center. We even registered with the government here, but we're paying taxes, I mean, we're like legitimate retreat center, but it's not a retreat center, it's our home. I'm sharing with people my home, my family, come staying with us, you know, like what you do in Arizona, but it's just more communal, I would say, in a sense. It's like we live together. I mean, we have our house, people live here on the same property, It's like, we live together. We share our life with people. My kids playing here, you know what I mean? So you just come and you just take a part of our life and you use that to heal, to learn, to understand, and to just create a better life for yourself, whatever that is. It's a home. It's a medicine home that
well,
we created here.
I wish it was a little bit easier for us to visit each other. I'd love to see it. I've always
Mm,
wanted to go to Peru. If I wouldn't have made it to San Luis, I would have made it to Peru sooner or later. But one of these years, I'm sure I'll be down there. So,
sure, it's very beautiful. It's very safe. Drink some medicine here. You can do your old tourist activities around. We live like in a hub of all these ancient archaeological sites. It's everywhere, sacred sites. It's like, yeah, it's very rich culturally and spiritually. So maybe when the baby a little bit older, it's a bit hard to travel. I don't know, at 2 years old, it's a bit hard, Traveling is not
oh, I don't
easy.
think so. Yeah, I don't think. Well, as my wife has taught me, we've been learning the hard way that you don't take a 2-year-old on vacation. You just babysit your 2-year-old somewhere else.
I
It's
see what
not,
you. It's a journey. Traveling is not easy. So we
but yeah,
started.
the thing is that the what you're describing you know, is an interesting thing that there isn't a lot of I mean this sort of psychedelic retreat center. I think that this is a good model in general. I just learning
Mhm.
about the psychedelic renaissance compared to a more clinical
Man,
setting of
I
no
can't
nature.
stand this. I can't stand this, man. I can't stand this thing. Clinical. This is like,
Well,
that's
it,
not for me.
no, and I feel for people. I just I don't know. I think that there's a lot of benefit that's going to come in the future, but I think it's possible a different model is really better. I don't
Get in the wild. That's the model.
well that
You
we
know,
definitely again. I really enjoyed talking with you, but it is sort of passing the day, and I'm sure it's
perfect.
been an hour and a half, and I'm sure we could talk more in the future sometime.
That's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you for doing this with me.
Of course, yeah. I will add your Instagram page to the video description so people can find you there, and hopefully that can grow into something more than what it is, other than just conservation project, which is very important, but also to bringing people to the medicine.
Well, yeah, it's weird because even though I've had done this peyote waste stuff and kind of know about this, I haven't really thought too much about it, how I would do it. So I liked hearing your story of doing it, how your vision took you to do it, not necessarily just because like I'm never gonna find a peyote way church of my own to bring people to. That model is not easily duplicated. But maybe there is
You
something I could.
create your own model. That's the whole thing.
I
Envision
bet.
your path. Take some medicine and envision your path. Okay, Luke?
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you for your time. It was good conversation, and we'll edit it up and we'll put it up.
sounds good.
Okay, well, all the best to you in your personal way, with your family and in your spiritual path. Just keep doing what you're doing, your heart in the right place. You love the medicine, and that's what matters.
Well, yeah, for me, it's just like I just don't get to talk about these things very much. There aren't a lot of people in where I live in rural Wisconsin nor in Mexico that are interested. It's like it's hard for me. I haven't been envisioning this because I other than Mad Nanny Konechka, I don't really have anybody in my life doing this.
Look, the internet is the infinite space. Use it.
Because God, in some ways, I could really see doing something pretty cool. I'm having this in this really interesting position in the world, having a wife who's Mexican. We currently have a house in San Luis,
There you
and
go.
looking for something to do as a family.
Make it a
Or,
medicine house.
well, I've actually picturing our little piece of land that has peyote on it somewhere around there. I'm like, that actually would be pretty cool to bring people out there,
Very
show them.
cool. Maybe I'll visit you one day with my folks, with my girls.
Well, if this happens, yeah, you're welcome to come. I'll show you. I'll take you. I don't wouldn't take everybody to see the best plants, but I'll take you to see the best ones.
I would love it. And we
Right,
harvested right there and waited right there.
right. This that would be a pretty cool experience. And
Okay, until
oh,
then.
until then.